Yeah, so we had that conversation on Friday with an analyst, Dr. Niyaki Shiju, and, well, he suggested that the Minister of Agriculture should not take all the blame when it comes to ensuring food security in the country, because most of the resources are under the control of the state and the local government. So today we're looking at the role of the subnationals with Dr. Debo Akonde. He's the executive advisor on agribusiness to the governor of Oyo State. He's also the Director General, Oyo State Agribusiness Development Agency. Dr. Debo, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Great. So we had a conversation on food security, and I mean, I'm sure you agree with me that it's a conversation that needs to be had until something changes in the country, because the issue of food insecurity is really glaring us in the face at this time. But our guest on Friday suggests that perhaps one of the reasons we're not seeing active movement, especially about a year since President Bola Tinubu declared the state of emergency on food insecurity, is because the resources are with the states and the states are not collaborating with the federal government. The states control the land, the water resources, and so they have the huge responsibility to ensure there's food security in the country. How would you react to this?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very correct statement that I agree towards, that there is a need to consistently have a collaboration between the federal, the state government and the local government as well. Much more because the state government is the one that have the farmer, state government is the one that have the land, while the federal government basically have control over policy, and law and legislation and all what have you. But I think it's also very instructive that for analysts to check what is already ongoing with the state as well. We can't completely say that the subnationals, are not doing much. They need to do much more. That is clear. But then we have a good number of the subnationals that are doing a lot, and I can speak for your state at this particular point in time. What has been done, in terms of support to ensure that the food security in Nigeria, is maintained and sustained. The interesting thing with the state is that it is not just now that we started, engaging, on the area of food security. 5 years ago, we have developed a strategy, that will help us to ensure that we become food sustained, and we also become a player in the global food value chain. And that has necessitated, some of the approaches that we have adopted. There is a saying among the agricultural experts, across the whole of Africa, that there is nothing like agricultural transformation without rural infrastructural transformation. I mean, if you produce all the food in this world and you are losing the majority of it to post-harvest, and also you are losing them to inability to transfer those food to areas where it needs to be consumed or marketed, and it's a waste of energy and resources. So Oyo State government, over these 5 years, has ensured that they put their money where their mouth is. If you check very well, over 67 to 70% of the road construction that has taken place in Oyo State in the last 5 years happened in the rural area. And this is opening up, our rural area that has the vast land for agricultural production. Beyond this as well, most of the feeder roads, within the state has commenced, construction also to be able to link into the farms where the farmers are producing. Beyond that, we are not, we've developed diverse systems that is complementing what has been the general norms in Nigeria. The general norms in Nigeria is that we've focused strongly on the smallholding way of agriculture, which is good, which is okay. There is nothing wrong in that. But with the increase in population and demand for food globally and even in Nigeria, you need to complement this smallholding system with a more better structured system as well. And for us in our state, we have adopted that as far back as 4 years ago. And what we have done is to start creating an ecosystem and an environment that supports, increased involvement of medium to large investors across the food value chain of agriculture in Oyo State. And what we've been doing is to use our resources to build diverse ecosystem of space for this private sector to survive or to exist. So you find out that of course, the popular one is known as the Partial Agribusiness Industrial Hub that we have built, and we have close to around 10 private investors, medium to large, that are within this hub that are now doing crop production and are also processing those products within that particular hub. We've also ensured that some of the critical factors, that impinge against productivity and production of crops within our state, we started overcoming them. So now, in our key areas and our key hubs, you will see seed farms, where we are producing early generation materials. And these early generation materials support productivity and production. For example, we've been using old materials to produce cassava that is giving you maybe 6 tons per hectare. Now this material that we have can give you close to 15 to 20 tons per hectare. This matters a lot. This is not just about cultivating lands, but the materials we are using in terms of production also are critical and very, very important.
All right,
these materials, yes. Yeah.
So while we applaud your state for, these laudable steps you have taken, but I'm sure you agree with me that even with all of this, we still have the threat of food insecurity. That means there's a need for collaboration, not just with the federal government, but even among states. And I do know that commissioners of agriculture from the Southwest met some time ago. Could you tell us what's going on when it comes to the issue of collaboration? As you've noted, you still need the federal government. How do we attract that might, federal might, to help in this area of infrastructural development, so that even though the state controls the land and the farmers, there's a collaboration that gives us food as a country at the end of the day?
I think the federal government needs to continuously use what we refer to as a targeted approach, rather than an approach that you think is applicable to all. We are a country, but we have divergence, in terms of who we are. Our lands are different, our vegetations are different. What is the need in this probably southwest of Nigeria? I mean, completely different, but what is the need in the northeast part of Nigeria, in terms of food production, even though we have some areas that are very similar with all of them. And what do I mean by that? If I limit myself to southwest for now, one of the critical components, of agricultural production in the southern part of southwest of Nigeria is land preparation or land clearing. This is not a major issue in the northern part of Nigeria. I have never, at a point in time, seen, a major intervention around the issue of land clearing in the southwest of Nigeria. I think this is very critical, and this is some of the discussion that the commissioners of agriculture within the region is having as part of their major discussion. There are lands, there are arable lands, there are lands that are good for production, but the cost of clearing it is humongous, And this is some of the areas where I think the federal government can have an intervention, of support state. While probably in the northeast of Nigeria, there will be another major areas that they are interested in, that are very peculiar to them, that needs to be focused on. Among the southwest governors, the commissioners, the discussion also followed how they can ensure that they open expanses of land, beyond the one that is currently being cultivated, and create a system where we have medium to large investors, to invest within the region to support the current effort of the smallholders as well. Part of the discussion also look at the necessity to ensure that we engage in ensuring that we create a system to support the rural area. It's not just to produce on the farm. If I produce on the farm, then what happens? And then the mechanization approach as well is very, very critical. Was about mentioning that one of the approach that has been adopted within Oyo State, and that might be something that will be of a great interest to the southwest, is the subsidization of tractorization by private sector. Not just to go and be buying tractors all over the place by public sector. Some of the things that we do as public sector are not our responsibilities. They are things that private sector should be doing rather than us. So what Oyo State government has done is to say private sector continue to provide support in terms of tractorization, but we will subsidize because of the cost of using a tractor that has gone very high. Lagos State government has an amazing approach that they use in terms of food banks as well. That other states in the southwest can also be feeding into, because you have a higher market in terms of consumption in Lagos, and the purchasing power in Lagos is quite strong, probably compared to the other part other parts of the Southwest also. So all this complementarity approach is very much there that we need to look into. Just a couple of days ago, and I will use that as an example, and why it is important to build rural infrastructure. I went and I do that consistently, went to some of our rural space, and on one of the roads that was constructed, I stood there for 2 hours, 10 minutes. And within that 2 hours, 10 minutes, I counted 49 of what we call pickups of cassava, 2 hours, 10 minutes, okay? 49 of cassava trucks. This is quite a lot, and this is one entry point, within the state. And because of that, I set out some of my staff to now do a quantification of the numbers of that kind of vehicle that pass through that particular road. Consistently now, for the past 4 days now, we have seen similar figure on average of around 47 every day within just a couple of hours. So for me, this is critical. This is very, very important. And we are going to use that to do an analysis to get the data around the numbers of that kind of materials that is moving within the state, for processing in our state. So, this is critical, it's important, and I think it's an essential area that the state has to be looking into. Again, I've mentioned that the federal government needs to complement this by providing resources to the state to get this done at the right time and on time.
All right, so we need a coordinator for that. So I guess we are back to the Minister of Agriculture if we're going to have federal input. But thank you so much for your time and sharing some of those perspectives and strategies that you're using in Oyo State. Dr. Deba Akonde, Executive Advisor on Agribusiness to the Governor of Oyo State.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break. When we come back, another conversation, important ones, awaits you.